I will discuss about our future, but mainly about what happens today. I'm sure you realize that we are experiencing a very critical moment where things are changing a lot, in particular our young people, and we have to be aware about that to deal with our patients in the future. I would like to discuss about myths, because at the moment we are all physicians, psychiatrists or psychologists, and so we are very rational, and we believe that in our society everybody is also very rational, and this is not the case. At the moment, we don't realize that people have very different way to think about life and human being. And so I would like during these 28 minutes to try to see in details what are the different myths behind all these people, because it is important in particular in psychiatry. You know that in psychiatry we are dealing with something like internal life, and the notion of internal life is not necessarily the same for everybody. In psychiatry, we are dealing with different people that are called insane in some country, and you know that in the past, insane were in close relationship with God, either for good or for bad, and in my country we burned insane people. And in addition, in child and adolescent psychiatry, this is even more critical, because our patients are within a family, and the organization of a family will change a lot across country, culture, and myth. And so we have to begin with, at the origin about myths, there was gods and kings. You had kings in Serbia, even an emperor, if I remember well. Yes. And kings and emperors were supposed to be very close to God, and this was structuring the society. Nowadays, in your country, I know, and in my country, people believe less and less in God, but still many of them does that, and even most of us have some kind of spirituality. And of course, we have to ask the question, is there a relationship between spirituality and how to deal with psychiatry? But today we are more with some kind of rational myth, and you know that it is said that it happened during the 17th century. Galileo, Descartes, Newton, they decided to propose that in reality there is matter, there are forces, there are laws, and we human beings, we are observing that. And we are doing science. And from here comes the notion of objectivity. In the past, objectivity didn't exist. And I mentioned the sunset. In the past, when you saw sunset with your girlfriend or your boyfriend, you were communicating with the sun, communicating with the nature. You were inside the nature. After the 17th century, the sun sends photons in your eyes, and you are interpreting reality like a scientist. And this is, on an ontological point of view, very different. And the fact that there is objectivity and subjectivity, of course, has a very strong impact in psychiatry, because in psychiatry we are dealing with subject. And from that came, on my opinion, things like neoliberalism, neuroscience, and public health, and we are going to see that in much more details. Perhaps you know less that after rational myths, there has been irrational myths. This is not to say that this is bad and pejorative. No, this is just to say that during the 19th century, Nietzsche, Marx, Freud, they said that, no, we don't agree with modernity and rationality. Truth does not exist. There is only relative truth, because everything is subjective, because we have never direct access to reality. We have access to reality only with our subjectivity. And so human first, reality second. I don't say this is true. I just say this is what they said. And so there is no more big stories like science or God. God and science are big stories. No more big stories, only little stories. And because of that, we had psychoanalysis, of course, but also, and we are going to discuss that, the notion of disability and the notion of mental health. And very recently, we have also what is called digital myth, because, of course, of the internet. And because of the internet, there is globalization. There is the DSM. Everybody is praying the DSM every morning. And we pray the same DSM all around the planet. There are social networks which have also an impact on the way our young patients are conceiving reality. And we are overwhelmed with algorithms. And of course, this structures the mind. And because of that, in my opinion, we have now new phenotypes of patients. And this is very intriguing for us. And there is also something new that is appearing, electronic health, which is likely to be a big revolution. And so now I propose to come back to all what is in red at the right part of the slide in much more details. First, about spirituality, it is said indeed that in most of our country, traditional religions are decreasing. I have no faith, no conflict of interest. I am Catholic, but my parents decided for me to be Catholic, but I have no faith. Anyway, in my country, fewer and fewer people do believe in traditional gods. And it is said that many people don't like religious dogma anyway. But more and more people are interested in spirituality, Chinese medicine, Qigong, Buddhism, soft religion, and even with what is called fluid spirituality. You can be Catholic one day, Buddhist another day, and doing Qigong and etc., from one day to one day. People like more and more spirituality. And of course, this is curious for us because we are dealing with interiority as psychiatrists, and so what is the relationship between spirituality and interiority? And even we are scientists, where is interiority in science? And in addition, does it really exist? Is it just a fantasy to say that we have an internal life? I don't answer to this question, for sure. What I will just say is that anthropologists show that for all human beings all over the planet, for all human beings, we have the impression that there is an internal life, interiority, and a physical life. This is typical for human beings. And this is where is our profession, very likely. We have doctor for the body, and we have doctor for the interiority, and this happens all over the planet. What happened anyway is that in our modern society, there is some kind of interiority crisis because scientists don't want to deal with interiority, accepted on a cognitive point of view, which is quite limiting. Is there an implication of that in psychiatry? Indeed, about the definition of psychiatry. We are going to see that we do not fully agree, all of us, about the definition of psychiatry. Is it a problem of the brain or is it a problem of internal life? I propose this definition. It will be open for discussion. Psychiatry is about the treatment of human in rupture on the existence. Rupture is very important. And this is a rupture about what they feel as internal to themselves and not projected on the body that they inhabit. So this was about spiritualities, about neoliberalism. You would say, what is This is just politics, economy, nothing to see with psychiatry. Of course not, because I am sure that you are working in hospital. There are director of your hospital saying to you, I give you money, and now you have to work, and you have to see 20 patients a day because they pay. And so if I pay you, you have to do the work. Health economy is everywhere. And this is because of neoliberalism. I don't say this is bad, I just say this is reality. This is reality. Okay, is there a side effect for psychiatry? Yes, because you have seen that for neoliberalism, speech has no value. Technology has value. We are going to pay for brain imaging. We are not ready to pay, they are not ready to pay for speech that is for psychological treatment. And this is true in all countries, and this is a disaster. This fascination for technoscience has a very strong impact in the way we practice psychiatry. And in addition, nowadays, we are no more considered as caregivers, but as workers dealing with clients. And I am not a worker and they are not clients. I am a caregiver and they are patients who suffer. This is totally different. This is totally different. Concerning neuroscience, it is very rational. Mind comes from the brain. If you want to cure the mind, you have to cure the brain. And so you have to study how the brain functions. And there has been a lot of research with fascinating results and theory. This is true. And this is in fashion. And because of that, we call our disorder neurodevelopmental disorder, even if they are psychiatric disorder. But that's life. This is fashion. It is supposed to destigmatize mental disorder. You know, if it comes from the brain, this is not insane. This is just a disease of the brain. I am not sure that it is so true. And there are data about that, you know, when you say that schizophrenia comes from the brain, people consider that if it is the brain, it is for the whole life. And so we have to put these people apart. Side effect in psychiatry? Yes, obviously. If you propose non-neuro treatments, this will be rubbish treatment. And this is why, here again, psychological treatments are not as invested as brain stimulation. Results are disappointing. Neuroscience are very fascinating, of course, but do you use neuroscience results to treat your patient every day? To treat a borderline patient that comes from a suicide attempt? No. And there has been so many money for neuroscience research that there has been very few money for other research. And there has been an oversimplification of causality. You are depressed because of serotonin. And so we are going to give you medication about serotonin. Of course not. Being depressed is not only a problem of serotonin. This is just reality. Everybody knows that. This is also problem of relationship with your job, with your wife, with your life, with your kids, etc. Now, concerning public health, I have a conflict of interest. Of course, there has been evidence-based medicine, and I have to say, I'm obliged to say that there has been many improvements in the way we treat patients because of evidence-based medicine. Of course, of course. Randomized control trials are very interesting. Of course. Epidemiology, you know, psychoanalysis, they said for long that trauma, early trauma is not good for kids, but we didn't do anything about that. Just psychoanalysis. Because we did epidemiology, we show that indeed early trauma is a risk factor, a main risk factor of many mental disorders. And so nowadays we are dealing with incest, sexual abuse for children, and this is good, and this is good, and this is, in a way, because of public health research. And we have now prevalence of mental disorder. This has been a big breakthrough. Okay, side effect for psychiatry. Is situation so simple? You know, randomized control trials are good to answer simple question. Is it better than a placebo? Okay, it works. But in psychiatry, situations are much more complex. For instance, when you have to define an outcome in a randomized controlled trial. Are you really sure that in a psychological treatment, the outcome can be defined so simply? Sometimes a patient comes from one or two symptoms, and during the psychological treatment, we realize that it was not these symptoms that are really the problem of the patient. It is something else. So, what do you treat? What do you measure? And because of that, evidence-based medicine favors medication, and this become a major public health issue in child and adolescent psychiatry, because it costs less, because it is easier to prove that it works. We are giving more and more pills to children, and this is likely to become a public health scandal. And about prevalence, we have prevalence, but prevalence of what? When people say there is a 10% prevalence of depression in Serbia, what does it mean? 10% of us are depressed? No. No. Because there is a difference between what epidemiology say and what we say when we see patients. Now, about irrational myths. We have to speak about psychoanalysis, because it is an old story, because between psychoanalysis and psychiatry, and child and adolescent psychiatry in particular. To be honest, there is some kind of apoptosis with psychoanalysis. And why? Because psychoanalysis has difficulties to meet science. And because rational people hate psychoanalysis. Because psychoanalysis say we are not rational. And rational people hate to realize that they are not so rational. Curiously, psychoanalysis is still very present in the society. When there is a problem, journalists, they don't ask to neuroscientists to explain the problem of society. They ask to psychoanalysts or sociologists. And so we have to ask to ourselves why. Perhaps because psychoanalysts and psychoanalysis can grasp complex situation, very complex situation, very deep and complex situation. And with rational science, this is not so easy to explain complexity. Side effect for psychiatry, indeed, it is less and less taught in most countries. And perhaps this is good because we cannot teach everything. Perhaps this is not so good because there is some kind of drying up of psychopathological thinking. I have the feeling that too often we have simple explanation about with what we see with our patient. And this is fake. And it does not work that well. Disability. You would say, this is not irrational. Disability, this is very simple. We have organs which have functions. Disability is a problem of impairment with the function. This is very rational. Okay, but this is not the definition of the disability. The definition of disability is that there is an interaction between a health condition and an environment. This is not because you have a problem with an organ that you have a disability. This is because the society does not agree with what you are. You know, this is very, very difficult to understand for a rational mind. But this has had a good impact in care, I agree. Inclusion, recovery are concepts that come from disability, and this is good for psychiatry and child and adolescent psychiatry. But there have also been some side effects because disability is very politically correct concept. Many money go to disability, and because psychiatry is much less politically correct, very few money go to psychiatry. There are also strange paradox. You know, for instance, if you have a kid with writing a very severe reading disorder, he will be helped with a computer at school, and teacher, we have to be very careful with this young student. If it is a student with a small reading disorder, he will be considered as a bad pupil, a dunce, with bad mark. that has to be rejected for school because he or she does not work enough. This is crazy. This is just a question of threshold. This is crazy. In addition, we say inclusion. This is very good to include our patient in normal life. But obviously, some very severe autistic patient cannot be included in normal school because this is very hurtful for them to be with so many young people. And this is very difficult to say that to people working in the field of disability. About mental health, also for rational people, mental health, this is very simple. This is, we have a normal brain with a normal functioning. If it does not function that well, we have mental health problem. This is just a software to say psychiatry. No, this is not the definition of WHO of mental health. Mental health is well-being, to work productively, and to be able to make a contribution to the community. Very curious as a definition. Very curious. Okay, good aspects. There is some kind of positive psychology in this definition, and so positive psychology can be interesting. This is very comprehensive. We do not focus anymore on mental disorder. We are focusing on the whole life of people. Perhaps with the words mental health, there is less stigma than with the word psychiatry, and sometimes even us, we do not use the word psychiatry and we say mental health indeed, because we have also the stigma of psychiatry within ourselves. This is crazy. And in many places, you have Institute of Mental Health and no more Institute in Psychiatry. Of course, this had side effect. Political correctness, mental health, this is very politically correct. But we have patients that have no more mental health problem. When you have a young girl with a BMI of 13, this is not a mental health problem. This is a life-threatening problem. This is a very severe problem. And there is no more money to treat this patient because the money goes to mental health, not to the more severe patient. And at last, psychiatry is not mental health. Mental health is well-being, working productively. My job is not that my patient work productively. No, this is that they do not suffer anymore, that they can find their place in the society, whether it is in working productively or not. About new phenotypes, because of digital myths, this is really fascinating. This is really fascinating. As you know now, there are social networks. Most of you use social networks, and it can be good. And I am fascinated by the level of social cognition of most of young people. Because when you have to text hundreds of times a day to people, you have to train your theory of mind. If I write that, they will understand that, and so I have to write it differently. And you do that hundreds of times every day during years, and so you become extremely trained in terms of social cognition. And most of my students are more have skills that are much better than me for that. I see that when they speak to me, I see that they consider that I am an old guy, and so they have to be very cautious in the way they speak to me, because I am not trained like them. Okay, this is good. As you know also, there is harassment with social media, suicide attempt because of social media. And there is what is called this cognitive bubble, because you communicate only with a small group of people, and so at the end, you have only in your mind what they consider, what they think, and it closes the way you see life and society. We have seen that during the pandemic. Something very curious about the body, you know that when you photograph yourself with a smartphone, you can change the way you appear. And so your body is no more what you see in the mirror. Your body is what you see because of the smartphone. And this has an impact. Plastic surgery is increasing a lot with young people. And you know, when human beings have problems to see and to consider reality, we know as psychiatrists that things can be a little bit difficult because reality is something that structures the mind. Modification of attention process, I do not say ADHD. I said that many young people, because they do plenty of things at a very, with a speed that is very high, when they come to school, it is very difficult to listen to the teacher. Most of teachers say that. And you have geeks also, you know, geeks, some kind of people with a very moderate way of autism spectrum disorder or ADHD or reading problem, etc. But they are fine and they work well. And so are they really patient or not patient at all, etc. This is some kind of a phenotype that is new and that raises problem because parents bring us geeks to be treated. So side effect for psychiatry is it really related, or that is it really related to child and adolescent psychiatry or not? E-health, okay, e-health, this is very simple. Now we are going to have digital symptomatology. Because of smartphone, because of application, when the patient will come, we will say, okay, you slept a mean of 8 hours a day with a standard deviation of 3, and mostly you go to bed at 10 o'clock and you wake up at 6 o'clock, and sometimes, you sleep during the mathematical course, and you didn't do sport, and etc., etc. And obviously, this will belong to the day-to-day clinical practice, and also we will have digital treatment. We have already thousands of applications about anxiety and depression, and this is the far west, you know, very few of these applications are evaluated as medication, and we don't know really which one we have to use, and but this is, of course, this is the future. And so this is my last slide. So how can we see in the future when we are in such a mess? So there are things that are in black and that are very simple. First, we don't realize that societies are expecting that we are solid and reliable. And this is even more important for psychiatrists. We are here to show the way. When people are going outside on very strange way, we have to say, no, this is not reality, this is where we are. And if we are in a mess, if we don't realize the situation is complex, we will not be able anymore to show the way. And so we have to be very clear with what we are facing. We have to read. We have to forget single thoughts. This is very easy to think that life can be explained by the brain, by dopamine and serotonin, etc., etc. This is not reality. Serotonin, dopamine explain a certain part of the situation. But spirituality, smartphone, social network explain another part of the question, and we have to know that. We have to learn how to work with others. This is the day-to-day job of the child and adolescent psychiatrist. We work with teachers, speech therapists, psychologists, etc., etc. This will be even more true in the future. We have to remain pragmatic. Physicians have to be pragmatic. This is the core of what they do. We have to deal with our resource, and we have 30 minutes with each patient, and we have to do the best with these 30 minutes. This is life. Okay, this is simple. What is not simple is what is in red. We do not agree today about what is child and adolescent psychiatry and what is a child and adolescent psychiatrist. If we do not agree within our community about something which is so simple, we will not be able to show the future. I give you an example. We speak about mental disorder. Why not mental disease? We could discuss hours about that, and we do not agree. We have now eco-anxiety. Is eco-anxiety a mental disorder or not? We do not agree. Autism, ADHD, is it a disorder, a neurodevelopmental disorder, a disease, or an identity? We do not agree neither. Prevention of mental disorder, is it the job of a psychiatrist or the job of the society? According to country, we have not the same answer. And what is a child and adolescent psychiatrist? For some of us, it is a pediatrician that does psychotherapies. For others, this is a psychologist that prescribes medication. Neither of that. Neither of that. We are a physician with an authority to treat people that suffer within themselves. And we are trained to take very important decisions in a short amount of time because we are physicians and we are trained to do that. We are trained to take responsibilities in very complex situations. But this is open to discussion. I thank you for your attention.